Revelation 5, verse 6. The seven-branched lampstand burning before the throne of God is the seven spirits of God. Okay? And even though there's only one spirit, as the Apostle Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, when it goes through the prism, it becomes physically manifest for the world to be able to see. So these seven spirits are connected to the 7 days of creation. Day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They're also connected to the 7 Moedim. Passover, unleavened bread, first fruit, Shavuot, trumpets, atonement, and Sukkot. So the first two that we've experienced are Passover, and we're right in the middle of unleavened bread. Now the spirits that go along with Passover and unleavened bread is the spirit of wisdom and the spirit of understanding. So I won't go any further than that, but I'm going to explain to you why this is known as the bread of affliction. Because what is happening in your own journey, and this is everybody on the face of the planet, whether they know it or not, because this is the cyclical way in which the Spirit of God works. And every spring, you might as well just count it, what God's going to do is He's going to give you wisdom. And what I mean by wisdom is I don't mean practical, experiential, things that you experience in life, but insights. So He's going to give you insight number 1, insight number 2, insight number 3, insight number 4, insight number 5. God's going to start revealing things to you, fresh light, fresh insights, fresh something. Where the affliction comes in and the difficulty comes in is with this. Here is my matzah. Matzah is unleavened bread. Matzah is a picture of humility. Humility is not puffed up. It's flat. It's humble. It's pierced. It's striped. The word for understanding in Hebrew is the Hebrew word binah. B-I-N-A-H. Binah. And it means to take all of these individual things that God has shown you, and then you start to separate them into categories on how they're used to be able to build things within the kingdom of God. So for instance, I do building for a living. That's how I earn money. And in the process of that, I know certain types of screws for certain jobs, certain types of boards for certain jobs, certain types of bracing for certain jobs, certain types of cement, certain types of tools, all those different types of things. Well, those screws, nails, boards, cement, whatever, all of those things are individual pieces. Putting them together into a project is the spirit of understanding, binah. It's separating things out so that you know how they come together. And then what's coming soon to a theater near you, and we'll talk about this more on Monday, is the spirit of counsel. And the spirit of counsel is not your ability to be able to counsel people. It's your ability and your willingness to receive counsel. To internalize. This is why I always emphasize to you, God gave you 2 of these, and 1 of these, use them in proportion. Listen twice as much as you speak. And this is going to be the first fruits. And then we'll count 50 days and we'll come to Shavuot, to Pentecost. And then we'll do trumpets, atonement, and Sukkot. And that's the key. So this is called the bread of affliction. It's hard to humble yourself. It's not easy to humble yourself. It's painful to humble yourself because you're allowing somebody else to be themselves. And themselves may not be where you are. So, what happens? It sucks eggs. It's miserable. It's not fun. It's yucky. the bread of affliction. This is this time of year. This is the time of year where things are done quickly. Things are done in haste. Good or bad. There's not always a lot of reflection upon things at this time, because this season is a season of, I'm in a hurry. I gotta go. This came up. I gotta do this. Blah, 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 blah. That's what the season is. It's not easy. But it is a time where you get to look on the inside and say, wow, with hindsight, that makes a lot of sense. Boy, that's an area, Father. Thank you for showing that to me. It's not fun. It's a bread of affliction. It's a difficult time. Things are unfair. Things are not right. Pharaoh wants to destroy you. If we went back to the Exodus story, Pharaoh is now chasing you. Welcome to a repeating cycle. Not a whole lot of fun. God's bringing you to a point to where you're on the edge of the sea. That's coming tomorrow. And when he brings you to the edge of the sea, you're going to go, what do I do? And God says, well, be still and see the salvation of the Lord. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to split the sea for you. I'm going to set you free. I'm going to release you. Just stand and see the Yeshua of the Lord. See the salvation of the Lord. It's coming soon to a theater near you. But you have to walk through the gobbledygook. You have to maintain that humility. You have to keep asking, Father, why is this happening? What's going on? Because he orchestrates. He orchestrates. Nothing happens where he doesn't go, oh my stars, that surprised me. With God, that's never the case. But in the midst of it, he's either A, trying to teach you something, or B, he's trying to use you to instruct somebody else. So the way that you handle it is the difference between night and day. Now, if I can understand that the way that I'm walking life's details through, okay, I may have brought this all upon myself. God has given me an opportunity to rectify my past mistakes, my goobers with a capital G, double O-B-E-R, or maybe I'm going, you know what, I just can't see anything in my life right now. But the way that I handle it is actually the way that God wants me to handle it for the benefit of other people. Let me show you what I mean. So we looked in John chapter 14, verses 21 through 23 the other night. Now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you something, and that this is the way that life works. And when you see this very, very simple analogy, then you can understand if you walk into a situation and you know how to handle it. If you're an athlete, just going back to an athletic perspective, and you're going to a stadium that you're going to compete against your rival, do you think you're going to be welcomed with flowers and cheers? No, you're going to be welcomed with boos and jeers. And they're going to do everything they can to keep you from actually communicating with your team to make things happen. If I know I'm walking into a hostile environment, I walk in and I'm ready. Here's our problem. I walk into an environment where I don't think it's not hostile, but then all of a sudden hostility happens. Wow, that catches me off guard. That's tough. 1 John chapter 4, verse 8 says that God is love. And we know that God loved us. So what God does is he says, okay, I'm loving you because this is my nature. This is who I am. My essence is love. And I love you. So now, what God expects of us is he expects us to reciprocate. This was John chapter 14, verse 21 and 23. Okay? So now here's what ends up happening. Gather this together and you'll understand. So when I start loving God back and I start loving him for who he is, then what that produces in my life is it produces a life of obedience. And when I start obeying him, the world sees that I honor him, so I'm demonstrating my love to him for people to be able to see. But I love him first. I don't obey to get his love. He loved me first. Now here's what he promised to do. He says, now if you love me and you keep my words, then I will tell the Father, and he will manifest himself to you even more. In other words, you can't outlove God. And the more that you recognize his beauty, then the more that he's going to reveal to you. You just don't want to become stagnant and say, well, I love God and I obey to this degree, but in this time I'm not loving. If I'm at a level 7 on my love factor for God, I want to move up to a level 8 this year. Or maybe even a level 9. I'm going to be realistic. The more that I love him, not the more that I just obey him, the more that I love him, the more he's going to reveal himself to me. Now, the shortest distance between two lines on earth is a straight line. It's a straight point between point A and point B. And man's desire is to get to where God is. That really is the key. It's a straight line. The problem is that most people don't go the shortest distance between 2 points when it comes to their relationship with God. What they do is they go like this. They come way out here. Now, this is the point that I wanted to make with this time of year of the bread of affliction, with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, with the wisdom, knowing how to do it and incorporating it into your life. If this represents me, and instead of loving God, I decide that I'm going to go on my own. And here I am out here on the side. I've told, I'll bet you, a dozen parents over my teaching career and history of leadership or whatever it is I do, their children are in flat out rebellion. They are not loving the Lord their God. They are not walking in obedience. And I will tell the person straight up to their face, I'll say, your child is exactly where God wants them to be. They are right in the middle of the will of God. And that person will look at me like with a double take, saying, what? I go, they're right smack in the middle of the will of God. And they will do a double take and they'll say, that makes no sense at all. And I go, oh, it makes all the sense in the world. Because just like our special friend that we have, a mutual friend, he is right in the middle of the will of God. And you say, how can that be? Because he has to travel this path in order for two things to happen. Him to recognize, oh boy, I have to come to my own conclusion that God is love. I got to come to my own conclusion that God is love. Reason number 2, the reason why the person is out here is so that you will be tested. To know how to love them. To know how to encourage them. To know how to kazak them. That's hard to do. Especially if it's one of your own. If it's one of your own, it's really tough. If it's somebody else, it's no big deal. You go home. You don't have to deal with it. But when it's you, why is this happening to that person? Why is this person taking this path? Why is this person? Well, Romans chapter 11 tells us real clearly. It says, God caused the nation of Israel to go astray, so that the good news could be brought to a goober like me. Because I was not the lost sheep of the house of Israel. God caused that to happen. He caused this to happen. You say, how does that work? I don't know. But as Court said, read the word. What did the word say? It says God caused it to happen. I don't understand it. God caused it. Why is everything happening in the world today? God caused it. Why? Because he wants to see how I'm going to respond. He wants to see how I'm going to care for people, love for people, bend over backwards for people, serve people, give sacrificially for people. I'm exhausted. I'm worn out. I've had it up to here with all this gobbledygook. Okay, well, go home or go to bed, take a nap, go take a short vacation, come back because it's going to be waiting for you. You can't run away from it. So face it. Face it, endure it, overcome it, and be victorious in it. That's what God wants. But this is important because this is ideal. God is love. He loves you. You know it. So what do? You love him back. And as a result of that, you obey him. But then when you're loving him, he reveals himself to you even more. So the reciprocating relationship of love even grows greater and greater and greater and greater and greater. But the person who doesn't walk this love life out, and they're over here, they're struggling for reasons A, B, and C. It could be their past, it could be their present, it could be their circumstances, it could be something they don't know how to handle, something they don't have enough wisdom to know how to handle. They don't have insights. They don't understand how to internalize that truth yet. They don't know how to walk it in power. They don't know how to live it sacrificially, and they definitely don't know how to live it in the fear of the Lord, resting in shalom. This is a constant cycle in every aspect of my life. Every area of my life, this is constant, going on all the time. So I have to learn that that's the way it is. Because what God's trying to do inside of me is trying to change me. He's trying to conform me to the image of his dear Son. Because God won't share his glory with another. He'll only share his glory with those who are like him. So, as I told a person several months ago, this person was frazzled, worn out, frazzled to a crackly crunch. Oh, I think we're still recording all this, aren't we? We're not even John 16. So then, frazzled to a crackly crunch. And I told the person, I said, bye. Go away. I said, go away. Don't come back until you can come back. The person was gone for 2 months. Periodically, every couple of weeks, I'd send a text message. I'd make a phone call. And I would just say, I'm just checking in to see how you're doing. Nothing else. I had no ulterior motive. I wasn't trying to counsel. Wasn't trying to woo the person back. I said to the person, I said, don't come back until you feel good. Because I missed the person who was dynamic and interactive and asking all kinds of wonderful questions, and you stopped doing that. There must be stuff going on in your life. Anytime I see something like that, I recognize there's something bigger going on than just that moment. That's why whenever, and I'll just tell you a secret of mine, good, bad, and different. Zig Ziglar taught this to me years ago. He said, you know when people are vomiting all over you? When people vomit all over you, that's the best thing ever. I looked at him, because we used to have lunches together and things like that, and he was a mentor of mine years ago. He would say, oh, no, that's the best. And I go, you gotta be kidding. That stuff's nasty. It stinks. Now I gotta wash my clothes. He'd say, but now it's exposed.
On the outside, yeah.
Now it's exposed.
Yeah.
It's on the outside. I don't worry about crap. And I don't worry about vomit. I used to. Now I go, clean up on aisle 4. Clean up on aisle 4. Because I vomit on people too.
Good management.
I vomit on people too. I don't always have it right. I vomit on people too. But I make sure, this was a piece of advice he gave to me. He said, when I was building my Amway business, he said, never throw down, always throw up. And I went, what? He goes, when you hurl, when you project, when you have a vomit comet, throw up. Give it to somebody who can clean up on aisle 4. Don't throw down. Throw up. Vomit comet up. Clean up on aisle 4. Oh, that's my job.
Gotcha. Up, Chuck.
Literally.
Yep.
So this morning's turned into a real just practical morning. Just hopefully all of our studies are always practical, but many things to consider. Britt?
I got to meet Zabe when I was like 16. He was a hero of mine. And
He's amazing.
how amazing you got to study
Yeah.
with him and he with you.
Yeah, a blessed memory for sure.
And as far as when you were building your Amway business, one thing I've heard in business is a good leader will always say, you always grow up, not down. In other words, if you're going to complain, you never complain to people beneath you or, quote, beneath you
Sure.
on the ladder because
Experientially.
discourage them.
Yeah.
You have to complain up, and then the person, if they're a good leader above you,
They'll give you
go-
wisdom.
They'll give you wisdom, exactly.
Exactly
They'll
right.
clean up your aisle, and then so you don't keep spreading the goo.
Exactly right.
He said his beautiful little red-headed sweetheart
That's
graduated from the MasterCard Hall of Fame.
Old Red.
Old Red.
Exactly.
Well, we didn't call her Old Red, did he?
No,
No.
I said that. He would never say that. He
That
would
little
never-
red hand.
That's right.
That little red hand.
That's
Oh
ex-
my gosh.
That's right. His term of endearment.
Yes.
He loved her, loved her, loved her. Yeah.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they had it all perfect. They
They love
had love. Yeah, it's good. Let's take a look at a few verses in John chapter 16. We won't cover much just for the sake of the flat bottom syndrome. Yeshua speaking all these things on the night in which he's betrayed. Wow. Talk about a leader. Talk about keeping his mind and his wits when the whole world is going nuts about him. These things have I spoken unto you that you should not be offended. But in verse 11 of the previous chapter, he said, these things I've written to you that your joy might be full. These two are equivalent terms. They're not equal terms. They're equivalent. If I'm going to have my mind focused on the joy that's out ahead, I have to understand when I get thrown up upon, whether it's throwing up or thrown down, I can't become offended. If I become offended, I'll lose sight of the joy. Then Yeshua says, they shall put you out of the synagogues. Yes, the time comes that whosoever kills you will think that he's doing God's service. Can you imagine that? You know what? You Torah observant people, you're going to die. And you go, how in the world is this? They're going to think they're doing God a service, when in actuality, they're not. But that's what they're going to think. And so why would they think that? Well, Yeshua made this comment back in his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 24, something that you've just recently done. In Matthew chapter 24, he says, because lawlessness abounds, iniquity abounds, the hearts of men are getting colder and colder and colder and colder, because the Torah has become less and less and less and less of a reality in the lives of people. Because Torah is what keeps the heart warm. Torah is what keeps the heart soft. Not the letter of the Torah, the spirit and the letter of the Torah is what keeps it soft. If you feel like you're being bludgeoned by rules and regulations, you're probably getting the letter. That's probably not going to want to draw you back. They think, and Yeshua's saying, see, the Pharisees of Yeshua's day, the one sect of Pharisees that led the band of misfits, most likely the Erev Rav, a mixed multitude of people who really weren't pro-Yeshua, that caused him to be dead, they thought that they were doing God a service. Paul thought he was doing God a service, only to have a V8 moment later and recognize, oops, that's my mistake. But it all had a purpose. That purpose is for Yeshua was to bring back together the 12 tribes, which is why the book of Acts starts out the way that it starts out, with the disciples asking the question, okay, so you've now died, you've now been buried, you've now risen again, so now is the time when you're going to restore the kingdom to Israel? He goes, not yet, boys. We got work to do. Head up to Jerusalem, hang out for 10 more days. Pentecost is about to arrive. We got some work to do first, but the process has begun because the price has been paid. And these things will they do to you because they've not known the Father nor me. Now, you see that phrase right there, known the Father? That's really important. Let me show you how important that is. If you go over to 1 John and you look at 1 John chapter 2, and you pick up the story here in verse 12. 1 John chapter 2. Notice the progression here. This is an important progression for me in my life. It's an important progression when I'm working with people in life, when I'm dealing with people who are professional, people who are non-professional, people who are goobers, people who are excellent at life. I always have to keep this in mind. Remember, you've known the Father. Verse 12. I write unto you, little children, because your sins are forgiven you for his name's sake. So, he writes because their sins are forgiven. Little children need to know that they're forgiven. That's why it's important for you to know that you, unless you become like a little child, you can no wise enter into the kingdom. So little children need to know that they're forgiven. That's important. Number 2, I write unto you fathers, why? Why do I write unto you fathers? Because you've known him from the beginning. See what we just read in John chapter 16? You've known the Father. See, fathers have known him from the beginning. So what it's intimating is that from the time that they were little children, they knew the Father. Keep reading. He says, I write unto you, young men, because you've overcome the wicked one. So we have 3 stages of growth that are being given here. Little children, young men, fathers. Fathers have the ability to reproduce. Fathers have known him from the beginning. From the beginning, they knew that they were forgiven. From the beginning, they knew that they were to grow to become young men, and they were to overcome the wicked one. Then they overcame the wicked one. Now they're in a position to become fathers, which means that they've reproduced themselves into the lives of other people. Keep reading. I write unto you, little children, because you have known the Father. That's the end of verse 13. 1 John 2:13. So we have little children who know their sins have been forgiven. We have little children who've known the Father. Great. Now we have one characteristic that's given about the young men. We have one characteristic that's given to the fathers. Verse 14. I've written unto you, fathers, because you've known him that is from the beginning. So once again, the only statement that's given to the fathers who have actually birthed children into this world, spiritually speaking, is that they have known the Father. And they have known the Father. Nothing else, because they already know that their sins have been forgiven. They already have known the Father. They've already overcome the wicked one. Then look at the rest of verse 14. I've written unto you, young men, because you are strong, and the word of God abides in you, and you have overcome the wicked one. So now I have fathers who've known him from the beginning, little children who've known him from their inception, and they know their sins are forgiven. We have young men who have overcome the wicked one because the word abides in them. See, fathers have gone from being children to being young men to becoming the ability to reproduce themselves. One of the challenges that we face, spiritually speaking, is we face the challenge to where we remain little children. We never understand how to become young men because the word never abides in us and we don't overcome the wicked one. We stay with our addictions. We stay with our challenges. We stay with those things and we never overcome them. But fathers are now in a position to where they're able to overcome everything and reproduce themselves, little children, to help the little children grow to become young men, to grow to become fathers. And this is why the promises are given from the fathers to the sons, to the grandsons, okay, to the individuals. So back in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, so I wanted to take that little 30-second commercial for you to connect the pieces of the puzzle in John chapter 16, verse 3, so that you would be able to take this phrase of how they have known. These things they do unto you because they have not known the Father nor me, but you have known the Father. But these things I've told you, that when the time shall come, you may remember that I told you of them, and these things I said unto you was at the beginning because I was with you. Remember, Yeshua made this comment back in chapter 14. He said, the reason why I'm telling you these things is so that when it comes to pass, this is in verse 29, and now I've told you that before it comes to pass, when it comes to pass, you might believe. That's why we know that Yeshua was a true prophet, because everything that Yeshua spoke of came to pass. See, today we have prophets on every corner. Just to give you my personal insight, there's not a prophet on the face of the earth. It's just my personal opinion. I'll tell you the reason why. Because a prophet has two qualities and two characteristics that he must display. Number one, he must be 100% accurate in everything he says, not giving this general prognosis of what's going to happen. We got all kinds of modern prophets saying, well, you know, Russia's going to do this. I'm going, you know what, all you have to do is be a student of history. You can figure out these things. This is not rocket science. You can say, well, the stock market's going to go up, it's going to go down. Look, great, thanks for letting me know. I'll know to pull my money out, or I'll know to invest, or I'll know to do whatever. Okay, great, that's good. But a prophet is 100% accurate because he puts a date on it. He puts a time frame on it. He says, this event's going to take place this way. He's not going to be Nostradamus who's 15% correct. He's going to be 100% correct. 100% correct. Then number two, besides doing signs, wonders, and miracles, he's going to proclaim the Torah. And I don't know a single person who calls himself a prophet in the world today who actually tells us you should be walking in the Torah. But Deuteronomy chapter 13 says, a prophet, if he teaches you anything besides the Torah, he's a false prophet. This is the problem with Yeshua, is because now we have Yeshua leading our congregations around the world, and he's telling us that we don't have to keep the Torah, that I came to do it away. That Jesus is a false prophet. That's scary, because this is the majority of the world. And the reason is because we don't know the Torah well enough to know that the only law that was a curse is the one that we covered this morning. That's the only one that's a curse, because it's irrevocable. That's why Paul in the book of Galatians said, there's a group of people who said, you don't need the death of Jesus, you lost sheep of the house of Israel, you Galut, you Galatians who've been scattered across, who've been divorced, who've married another. You just need to be circumcised and keep the Torah and follow us. And Paul goes, okay, do you not understand that if it wasn't for Yeshua dying, that you could keep the Torah perfectly, and that's never going to register on God's account? You need Yeshua, who broke the curse of that law in order for you to be brought back together again. So if we understood these fundamentals, life wouldn't be so challenging. Britt?
Maybe a pretty ignorant question, but I got lost where you said the false Yeshua. You mean the ones at the mass churches or
proclaim,
like yeah, like you claim it and have it and all that kind of stuff. Yeshua, but Yeshua that we know is
he's the real McCoy.
Okay,
He's the real McCoy.
And the Torah is, and this is even a more ignorant question I was going to ask you on the side, but I'll just ask it in front of everybody. Is the Old Testament what you refer to as the Torah?
Actually, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible.
Thank you.
That's the Torah.
Okay.
So you remember the other night when we were doing our study on grace?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Do you remember that the word is from the where? He's from the
Torah.
He's from the beginning.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So in the beginning was the Word. Who is the Word?
Him.
It's Yeshua.
Right.
So if the Yeshua comes on the scene, the one that we say has been from the beginning,
Right.
that every word that God spoke is the reality of Yeshua.
Right.
If we say the Yeshua that we're proclaiming from the pulpits and probably 99% of the congregations in America today, he came to do away with the law. If he came to do away with the law, then guess what he just did away with?
The first 5 books.
He did away with the first 5 books, but guess what he just did away with?
Himself is the word.
He did away with himself.
Oh.
Because he's the Word.
Okay.
So every word that God spoke to Moses was Yeshua.
Okay.
So if Yeshua is saying you don't have to keep me, that makes no sense.
So I was stuck in that for a while in the New Testament thing myself. You know, everything's forgiven, and I don't need to. You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grace washes it all. And I was on the koan table when you were teaching Grace, and that was awesome because we do have to keep the law. We do have to keep the Sabbath. We do have to do what he says. If we love him, we do that because we love him, not because we're obeying, expecting him to love us. But
that love doesn't change.
Yeah, but this is amazing.
Yeah,
okay.
it's true. Now here's the thing. Just to insert this. So what, in my opinion, I'm giving you the word that's not corrupted. It's not genetically modified. I didn't say it's complete. I just said it's not genetically modified with man's gobbledygook. Okay? It's incomplete because I don't know everything. I only know in part. That is for sure. There's no questions, ifs, ands, buts about it. But what I can tell you is this. Is just like when, I don't know how it was with your children, or Joy, I don't know how it was with your children, or Michelle, how it was with your children, or you, Anna, with your children, or anybody on the Zoom call with your children. But when your husband put the seed inside of you, and it took, your hormones started changing. And for some, they become sick, morning sickness. Whenever the word, which is the seed, which is likened to the sperm, is received by the female, by the bride, it's going to change your chemistry. It's going to make you sick. You're going to start doing vomit comets. You're going to want to run, and then there's going to be a pain in your back until it's birthed out. And then when it's birthed out, but then in the process of the seed becoming part of you, now people will say, oh, you look radiant. You look beautiful. And you say, I feel like a beached whale. No, you look beautiful. You're radiant. You're life. Why? Because something's working on the inside. Faith doesn't really take place until it's birthed out.
Till you can see it in action?
Till you can see it. That's exactly right. You can say intellectually you believe something. So for instance, a lot of people know that we should keep the Sabbath. But that thought, we're debating, we're like Peter walking on the water. The waves are being tossed to and fro, as Yeshua said, and that's the doctrines. Those were the waves. As James says, you're tossed by every wave and wind of doctrine. This is what the Word says, but this is what my pastor says. This is what my Sunday school teacher says. This is what my whatever says. And so we've got this, I'm being tossed to and fro. And it's making you sick. You're seasick. You need Dramamine. You need something to be able to solve the seasickness. So now you take that and you go, oh, that feels better. But it doesn't solve the problem. So that seed has to grow and develop in you until it can't grow anymore. And then you're going to have labor pains. You're going to experience labor pains actually going through the decision of implementing that into your real life. At first, it's just going to be an intellectual assent. I don't believe that. That's not true. That's not there. But you know it's true. You know that's how the cow eats the cabbage. But then it's going to make you sick. You're going to receive it. You're going to be a Berean. You're going to receive it. And then it's going to make you sick. And you're going to be going, oh, why did I let him put that seed inside of me? Oh. But then once your body gets it, your body's going to go, okay, this is what I'm about. I'm supposed to give birth. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to give this baby a nurtured environment. I'm supposed to let the baby grow and develop and then birth it out. Then everybody will see that the baby is a combination between the father and the mother. The seed was placed by the father. It grew and developed inside of you until it matured, and then it was birthed out, and everybody goes, oh, it's got the father's nose. It's got your father's eyes. He's got your toes. Oh, he's got your smile. He's got your ears. Oh, he's got your color hair. The combination between the father and the one who birthed the seed that grew and matured. Okay? Does that kind of give you some food for thought? So you know what? When we talk about Yeshua, the Yeshua that is being propagated, and I would say, this is going to be my honest engine statement, it is not purposefully. You don't have pastors standing up there just going, I'm going to deceive you. No. They're just regurgitating what they learned in their seminaries. They learned their Baptist doctrine and they see the word through the Baptist doctrine. They learned their Methodist doctrine. They see it through the Methodist lens. They see it through and I have nothing against that. I've got pastors all over the world in various congregations. Doesn't faze me in the